Rupert Murdoch does own an enormous amount of your media, you know, with Fox News and the Fox station and 20th Century Fox Pictures, etc., and some of your newspapers. And I think people need to ask themselves, you know, who is this man who owns such a large part of our media?
And tonight in Your America, there is shocking new evidence that schools all across the country are going to great lengths to indoctrinate your children. 11 new videos of students being forced to sing, dance, and speak in praise of the Anointed One, President Barack Obama, have been uncovered by BigHollywood.Breitbart.com.
Obama is cool. He has two daughters that like to go to school. It's not outside, they jump in the pool. Publicity around, we have to follow the rules.
And the slogan, agitate, educate, organize, is something that they've adopted. It's the radicalism that is the real problem here, and the total waste of intellectual human capital. Instead of these kids learning to memorize Paul Revere's Ride or the Gettysburg Address, they're memorizing hymns to President Obama.
I got to tell you, it's almost like they're putting him on a pedestal. It's almost like godlike worship. And frankly, for schools that, you know, don't allow any mention of God or don't allow any mention of, you know, religion, it almost seems like this bizarre form of worship of the president. Do you see it that way?
Well, David, look, it's not indoctrination to anybody except Karl Rove, Josh Bolton, Roger Ailes, the rest of the Bush administration in exile over at Fox News, because they're trying to push a political agenda. And they're trying to destroy this administration, and they'll use any means necessary to do it. And just to give you a little example of this, James O'Keefe, who is the author of one of the suspect Acorn videos that there have been a lot of questions surrounding, told Chris Wallace recently on Fox News that he was employing tactics that would, quote, destroy his political enemies. So that's what this is about. There's nothing abnormal about folks talking and children learning about their president and learning about their democracy through talking about the president. I did it when I was a kid.
Subsidizing Media Matters' liberal propaganda war against Fox News Channel, but should the left-wing watchdog group be allowed to capitalize on tax breaks if they're made it their sole purpose to target a news outlet?
Well, Soros is a billionaire, originally from Europe, naturalized American citizen, has in the past been caught up in insider trading activity in Europe, spent $27 million of his own dollars in 2004 in an effort to defeat George Bush. Absolutely, totally unprecedented effort on his part. Did not succeed. Bush was reelected in that year and has since then put money into more strategic efforts like Media Matters, like the liberal think tank Center for American Progress, in an effort to elect Democratic candidates.
Yeah, their original application described them as an educational organization. How are they educating people?
Media Matters just attacks. They don't offer any policy. Then you look at the educational level. What are they doing to educate people? They're just attacking. They don't write policy papers. They don't tell people this is what we think America should do, or this is what we think the policy should be adopted. It's just, it's kind of, I call it, it's a cut and paste hack job on anyone that appears on Fox News.
Yeah. But when I get on a plane, I got to tell you, if I see people who are in Muslim garb, and I think, you know, they're identifying themselves first and foremost as Muslims, I get worried. I get nervous. The war with Muslims, America's war with, is just beginning.
You evoke sympathy with the 9/11 families.
That's a bunch of crap.
So
I've done more for the 9/11 families, by their own admission. I've done more for them than you will ever hope to do.
Okay.
So you keep your mouth shut when you sit me exploiting those people.
You're
I
not
know.
representing
And I never represent you. You know why?
Why?
Because you have a warped view of this world and a warped view of this country.
Well, explain that. Let me give you an example.
I'm not going to debate this with you.
Well, let me give you an example of parallel experiences.
No,
on September 14th.
Here's the record. Here's the record.
Okay.
All right. You didn't support the action against Afghanistan to remove the Taliban. You were against it.
Why would I want to brutalize and further punish the people in Afghanistan?
Who killed your father?
The people in Afghanistan didn't kill my father.
Sure they did. The Al-Qaeda people were trained there.
The Al-Qaeda people? What about the Afghanistan?
See, I'm more angry about it than you are.
So what about George Bush?
What about George Bush? He had nothing to do with it.
The director, senior, as director.
He had nothing to do with it.
So the people that trained 100,000 mujahideen who were extremists.
I hope your mom isn't watching this. I hope your mother is not watching this.
The American people, the world's admired democracy, cannot ever again allow ourselves to be misinformed, manipulated, and misled into disastrous foreign adventures.
We want to be with you and your Tea Party. If you have a Tea Party anywhere that we're not covering one of those, email me at glennbeck@foxnews.com. We may cover your Tea Party live on April 15th. I launched a project back in March, and it comes together Saturday, September 12th, 9/12. Thousands of people are going to gather in Washington, D.C. and around the nation to stand up for the principles and the values that have made America great.
Well, how do we reverse that trend? Congresswoman, 47% of American households don't pay a penny or less. Right. In other words, they get a tax credit. They don't pay any taxes. Eventually, there are too many people in the cart, not enough people pulling the cart. The cart's got to stop, right? But how do we stop that trend?
Well, that's why I follow the money with Eric Bolling, because you talk about this all the time, Eric. What we have to do is actually, my opinion, abolish the tax code, just make it very simple, and that way we can encourage and incentivize success. I want all Americans to have a chance to be wealthy. I want everyone to have a chance to succeed, not punish people who succeed.
Congresswoman, you've been associated with the Tea Party, maybe even a figurehead. Congresswoman, is the president listening to the Tea Party? Is he listening to you?
No, absolutely not. He has his fingers in his ears. The president continually wants to stick it to people that he thinks have succeeded in this world.
Fox News made a circus of the Republican Party, and boy, does Roger Ailes regret it now. Yeah, let me go to Judd here. Like this whole question of his empire, I was always fascinated by the speed. You might call it the fast tracking of this guy's American citizenship. We argue about immigration about all the time in this country. I know people have become Americans. It's a wonderful thing when you do it. This guy did it in about 15 minutes. Who helped him? How's this happen? How does he get these licenses that you can only get if you're an American citizen? Well, who's helping him here?
It was very unusual circumstances, because it was in 1985 when he wanted to buy a whole host of television stations, and you needed to be an American citizen to get it.
So
and that's when he announced it, and he actually got the regulatory approval from the FCC prior to even getting a citizenship.
Did he become a citizen just like somebody marries somebody to get in the country because they want a job, or because he discovered some love of America?
Well, he had been
a true American.
He had been living here for many years, happy to still be an Australian citizen. And then he wanted to buy these television stations. The only way he was going to do it was to become a citizen.
Let's go to something more obvious. He's hired Rudy Giuliani to represent him. He's hired Gingrich to work on a station. He's hired Palin, Governor Palin, to work for him. He's got Huckabee working for him now. He's had Santorum working for him now. He's got a better stable than the RNC of Republican big shots. They're on his payroll, or have been, or will be again. That's a lot of clout.
The big question that has to be asked, Greta, is, are we at war? I haven't heard the president say that we are at war, and that's why I, too, am not knowing, do we use the term intervention? Do we use war? Do we use skirmish? What is it?
Viewing his speech, what he said tonight, and rereading it several times, I mean, there are a lot of nuances, and I thought to myself, if in times of war that you have to explain it in nuances, it really does mean that you really don't have a clear sense of why we're there, what we're doing, what our objective is when you have to sort of go, well, it's a little bit this, a little bit that. I think that's what I found disconcerting.
A bit of hope during his speech when he mentioned the North Star. I mention the North Star so often. The North Star is part of the Alaska flag, where we up here are able to use as our GPS, as kind of our plumb line, the great North Star with its abiding light, or land and sea, a beacon bright. We look at the North Star, and it helps us, I believe, it helps me stay focused on what really matters. So when the president mentioned the North Star tonight, I thought, hey, maybe he gets it. Maybe he understands what the U.S. interests are, how committed we need to be to winning in this intervention, in this war. And yet, even from there, the reference to the North Star, he kind of wandered off again and allowed more of the inconsistencies and the questions and the kind of the dubious rationale being used. More of that just was being revealed.
Come on, man. If you're a Republican or a conservative, You gotta be embarrassed by this. This is your idea of leadership?
This is our house here. If somebody comes to your house and begins spitting on the floor, you'd remove them. Glick was out of control and spewing hatred for this program and his country using vile propaganda. Glick was saying without a shred of evidence that President Bush and Bush the elder were directly responsible for 9/11. Now, that kind of stuff is not only loony, it's defamation. He came on this program and accused President Bush of knowing about 9/11 and murdering his own father.
Well, I think what the scandal in the UK has really shown is that, that Murdoch uses this virtuous cycle of developing relationships that then end up paying business dividends when legislation is passed that is favorable to News Corp. And I think these questions are being asked. Obviously, the relevant questions are being asked in Washington. And it's too early now to know ultimately where the scandal is going to go. But it's obviously the biggest existential crisis to face News Corp in probably its history.
We have different rules in this country. And I'm not saying we're cleaner all the time, but we have certain rules we're a bit pristine about. You're not allowed to bribe foreign officials in this country, even if you're an American multinational. Isn't that interesting that might be a way to get at this guy by people who think he's just too powerful? Well, Senator Jay Rockefeller and Barbara Boxer have asked Attorney General Eric Holder and SEC Chairman Mary Shapiro for an investigation into whether News Corp broke a U.S. law that bans payments to influence foreign officials. Interesting. We have a law. You can't bribe overseas. The reported allegations against News Corp are very serious. That's the quote coming out of them, and indicates potentially thousands of victims in a pattern of illegal activity. It's important to ensure that no United States laws were broken and no United States citizens were victimized. Also, Congressman Peter King today asked FBI Director Robert Mueller for an investigation into whether News of the World reporters, that's the newspaper he ran, illegally obtained phone records of U.S. 9/11 victims.
Fox this week criticized the White House for inviting Keith and me to attend an off-the-record briefing with the president, given that the White House has also recently criticized Fox, which of course is seen as one of our competitors. Well, the White House, including the president himself, has said in recent days that they will treat Fox essentially as an opposition political outlet rather than a normal news channel. Expressing an opinion about the news does not negate one's status as a news reporter or as a correspondent or as a news anchor. The expression of opinion about the news is not the difference between Fox and the rest of the news media. The difference between Fox and news is that Fox is now actively organizing and promoting a protest movement against the U.S. government. This is a story that most of the media has gotten wrong so far, by not only defending Fox as if Fox is just a news network that has a right-wing point of view, but by ignoring what Fox does as a network that has nothing to do with the news. It's a free country, and Fox can do what it wants. God bless them and keep them. But it would frankly be strange. It would be weird for the White House, for the U.S. government, to treat a group that is organizing protests and rallies against it as if that group is just covering the news. It's not. One of these things is really not like the other.